welcome to All Stars with me, Sal, and Josh Williamson. Josh, welcome back to our show.
Yeah, this is our
Haha,
new monthly show. It
that's
was
right.
interesting to see how I don't think everyone got that this was going to be a monthly thing at first.
No,
But I'm like,
no.
no, I'm here every month now.
Yeah, it's
Once a month.
happening.
You
That's
got me
right.
once a month, and we're going to talk about this. But it's funny, and I always tell people when they talk about this, what people don't know is that you and I have literally actually been talking for the last 2 hours already.
That's
And
yeah,
now
it's
we're diving in.
right.
So
Now we're finally doing the
now we're
show because
finally actually recording, but we ended up talking for 2 hours before. And we just talked
yeah.
about comics and movies and our love of Hook. Talked about the movie
Yes.
Hook for a while.
Should we
Hey,
yeah,
I have a question for people that you put in the comments. Like, what are your feelings on the movie Hook?
right?
Good or bad? I want to hear it. What are your feelings on the movie Hook? I love it. Sal, you said you loved it, right?
I did. I loved it as a kid.
Yeah, yeah,
I enjoy it now. I think the soundtrack. I would rather listen to the soundtrack than watch the movie nowadays. But it still holds up, I think. Like, it's because it's a
yeah.
Spielberg movie, like, tons of practical effects.
Oh
The
yeah,
digital
yeah.
effects are
The sets are
incredible.
crazy in that
Sets are
movie. Those
great.
sets are insane, dude. They're
You
so
can
huge and
every
like,
dollar is right up there on screen. It's
yeah,
funny,
yeah.
when you asked me what my thoughts on Hook were when we were talking
Hmm.
earlier, I was immediately taken back because the cultural consensus, Hook
Hmm.
sucks and was a massive flop. And
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's because of that that one of my co-hosts, Ethan, and I have been for the better part of our entire friendship talking about a sequel to Hook, which we call
Oh
Hook
man,
2. No
I'm
fanfare,
here. I
right?
am so here. I want to hear all about
Dude,
this.
Hook 2 would be because the thing is, I think you could still do it because it doesn't really matter, right? Like, because Hook
Right,
is
yeah, yeah,
you could set it 100 years from now, and Neverland never changes.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
everyone who was a Never Boy is either dead or recast, whatever, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean,
Lost Boy.
you could do Rufio and
Yeah,
Dustin Hoffman, and I know Rufio would probably be super pumped to do a sequel.
seriously.
There's stuff you could do with it. Yeah, I'm fascinated. Cause I always think about Neverland and Peter Pan stuff. Like a lot of writers, like I think almost every writer out there is like, I have a take on Peter Pan.
I'll
Uh,
bet.
I will tell you my only Peter Pan thing. I mean, I have a couple little like Peter Pan ideas, but the one
Oh,
that
sure.
I've always been like, this is what I wish had happened, and you might think I'm a crazy person. Uh, I I want there to be a Pirates of the Caribbean movie where at some point
Oh my
Jack
god.
Sparrow like figures out like there's some kind of thing where kids are getting kidnapped, whatever, and he has to like save one, and he finds out that it's Neverland. You don't do anything with Peter Pan. It's basically Jack Sparrow versus Hook,
Oh my
and you get
god.
Hook to be played by somebody like Robert Downey Jr. or something like that, which is like
Somebody
so over
fun.
the top and charismatic and fun. Where
Yeah.
you're like, this person's a bad person because they're the villain, of it. But then they could team up. You could find out there's another villain. Maybe Peter Pan is the villain. Who knows?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
which was remember Peter Pan was supposed to be the villain of Fables, and then he changed his
Really?
mind. I think that's public. I hope that's public. I think that's public information.
I'll have
That
to check
Fables
that.
it was supposed to be Peter Pan, but because of the legal issues with Peter Pan at the time, they couldn't do it, so they
Mm,
changed it to Geppetto. I think that's public information.
okay. Well, we'll have to
But
cross-reference that, make
we
sure
can
this
leave it
doesn't
in.
get
But yeah,
but
Hook is great. Hook is great.
Hook is great.
Yeah, it's a good movie. Once you have kids, though, let me tell you, buddy, that movie hits you way harder,
Oh,
way
I'll
harder. Like
bet.
I'm sitting there watching it, and all that stuff at the beginning, I'm like, oh man, dude, like I
Am
work
I
too much.
yeah, am I him? And it's great because it's
Yeah,
also prescient. That movie came out in '91, and it's all about being addicted to your cell phone, and I like how odd it
yeah,
is for he's the odd man out because he's the one on the phone.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. But now, yeah, everybody been there. When she throws his phone out the window, that scene's really great.
it is.
All the performances in that movie really work, but like we were talking before, the score of that movie is
Oh,
amazing. Like it
of
is
course.
very powerful. When I was working on Birthright, I would play that score a lot because I felt like it was one of the closest, because that movie is about fantasy and family put together,
Yes.
realistically, and the idea of like what a person does. Now I'm realizing I ripped off Hook. But
Ah!
it is so much about the idea that like, what is the story after the story? I always find
Right.
those kind of things fascinating. Like, what do you do after, or what's the sequel to some of these fantasy stories?
Yeah.
And that was part of the origin of Birthright. But Birthright was all about family and fantasy adventure, and that's really what Hook is.
Yeah.
It's very similar to all these like family problems and family dynamics thrown into this fantasy setting. a father with his kids, and him having to reconnect with them through this
Yeah.
whole thing. And also, I think that was the movie that Steven Spielberg's dad watched and finally was like, okay, I get it. Like,
I screwed up. All right, I'm sorry, but I
so I
mean,
think that's like I think that either Steven Spielberg or somebody in that Spielberg documentary actually talks about this, that I think it was Hook, where his dad, like literally in real life, his father was
yeah,
like, okay, maybe I should have been around more. Like,
yeah.
maybe
Well,
I
I
should
mean,
have been more of a father figure. I think that's, if
remember
you've
in
watched The Fablemans, have you
yeah,
seen Fablemans yet?
I have not seen Fablemans yet, but I know that
Oh,
like
okay.
I've heard rumor that like he waited for his father to die to make it, basically.
Hmm.
And I think that like nothing could be
Yeah.
more damning than making your dad Peter Pan and say you've ruined Peter Pan for me. Like you've ruined like the idea of what your father's supposed to be. I mean, look at the Last Crusade when when they have they finally sit
I mean,
down.
Last Crusade is where I'm like, that's the one where I'm like, yo, like,
You
Papa
should pick up.
Spielberg, how
Well,
did you not know in that one?
I mean, you're sitting there when they're sitting there together, and he's
Yeah.
like, "We never talked. The last time we had a quiet drink, I had a milkshake." It's just like that
Yeah.
should have been
Yeah.
the moment.
Yeah. That's the one where Spielberg's dad should have been like, all right, this is all about me. It's
Yeah.
always been about me. Well, Spielberg said
Well, look
recently,
at
he was talking
E.T. The
about,
dad's barely in the damn thing. He shows up at the
because
end and goes like, "Oops."
that movie's about divorce.
Oh,
And
big
that's
time.
the, because he's doing his work. I mean, listen, I love Spielberg, and I think this is part of it, is because like all these movies, you're like, especially once you know more about him,
Yeah.
you're like, oh man, this guy's been doing the thing that all writers do, where he's writing is essentially therapy in a lot of ways. So
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
doing the thing, right? Like he's dealing with all the issues, and like he like, I think it's really interesting that in uh Close Encounters. So
I
in
was gonna
Close
say Close
Encounters, we're gonna
Encounters.
get into spoilers here. People haven't seen these movies. In
There's a
Close Encounters,
moratorium on 35-year-old movies, guys. I gotta tell you.
I agree with you. You never know.
It's
There's
true.
like one person that's like, I wanted to watch that. Like, but
Well, then pause this and watch it, man. I gotta tell
yeah,
you. Yeah.
it's a good movie. Yeah.
It is. It's
It's
great.
so Close Encounters. The dad like leaves the whole family at the ending, right? He just leaves.
Yes.
He just totally leaves, and it's total bullshit. And I think as Spielberg now has said, he's like, that was a mistake. He would have
He
done it
did say
differently.
that. He said
Yeah.
if he could, he would change it so that he would go back to his family. But also,
Yeah.
if you watch Close Encounters, like especially, I remember seeing it. I think I was a teenager when I saw Close Encounters the third time
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
for the first time, and they do backflips to make that family unsympathetic and unlikable. Like
Oh, dude.
you want Dick Dreyfuss to abandon his family if you are not a father, right? Like I think that's
Well,
how
that
it is.
movie is,
It's
again,
from
when you
his
think about
perspective.
it,
Like it's
yeah,
about his
it's
dad, but
yeah,
trying to
yeah,
understand his dad and why he left. Like, oh, if you want to
yeah,
abandon me and mom and go hang out with aliens and play the keyboard, then go right
yeah, yeah,
ahead,
yeah.
I guess. Like,
Well, you saw, I forget who it was now. There was an interview. Somebody was interviewing him. It wasn't Inside Actor Studio, but somebody was interviewing him. I'm like forgetting who it was, and they were like, "Oh, it's weird how in Close Encounters the whole thing is like music at the ending, and that was a thing between your parents. That was the thing with them also, is music, right?"
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
Spielberg like was like, "Son of a bitch!"
He's
Like
like,
he didn't
what?
even realize he had like therapists himself. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like he had
yeah.
like had inserted so much of himself in those movies, but yeah, I find that fascinating. Like you go back and look at those, and you're just like, oh man, I get it. Like when you're dealing with stuff, there are times, I'm not gonna name this writer. I'm not gonna name who they were. I had a friend one time give me a comic book script they were working on, and I remember reading it, and then I called him and I was like, hey, so you're breaking up, huh? Like I was like,
Oh,
is that what's going on right now?
yeah. Well, there's that great moment in what was it, Paul Dini's book, One Dark Night, where
Oh, dude.
he hands Alan Burnett the script for Phantasm, and it's like the line
Yeah,
says, "It's like you pick these people because you know there's no chance for an actual serious relationship," and he's like, "So it's just." You're just working through some stuff right now. Like, is this just about
yeah,
you and Arlene? And he's
dude.
like,
I
"What?"
I I kid you not. On my iPad right now, I have to scroll back through. When I read that for the first time, so I get all this stuff free from DC digitally, right? So like when
Yeah,
new comics come out, sometimes ahead of time. Uh, that book, The One Dark Night, when I got it, I actually got it early. They sent it to
nice.
everybody early. I screen grabbed so many scenes from that book because I was like, from a writer perspective too, and also
Yeah,
just because it's weird, right? Like our perception of that book is interesting because it's so much about writing, but it's a Batman story, and it's
yeah.
also about a particular, a real person,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also connected to something that we all love, which is Mask of Phantasm, the Batman animated series, like
Yes.
all that stuff. It's like it's so deeply connected to all those things. That's what I'm looking at now. Yeah, I had so many screen grabs of that book when it came out because I was just like, that's interesting. But also, it's Eduardo Rizzo.
Yeah.
And Eduardo Rizzo, like, coming in and doing a more personal story, and, like, I think for the most part, we're really used to Eduardo Rizzo doing, we're doing all this stuff about, or 100 Bullets. Like, when
Yeah.
you think of Eduardo Rizzo, I think you think of 100 Bullets.
You're
And
thinking
there's a lot of other
noir.
books they've done. You think of
Exactly.
noir, so then all of a sudden doing this, like, much more emotional, really deep
Intimate,
story.
personal story. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, but I did a bunch of screen grabs of that just because it was like Eduardo Rizzo doing really cool, um, just art and mix
Yeah.
it with this emotional story. It was really good. But I think it's interesting when people do that, where you put like yourself on the page. I'm not sure if I would ever be able to do that as much. If I did autobio, it would always be like you would not know it was me.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Uh, like, I mean, listening with James, like when he does Something Is Killing the Children, the fact that he's in that book. I mean, it's the main
Yeah.
character in the first arc. His name is James. It's like he just put
Right.
himself right in there. And he's talked about this in a Substack. I'm not telling you the other talk. He's told anybody.
Yeah, you're not telling tales.
I'm not outing him. He talks about this in his newsletter. That's like he literally the development of that was like put himself in it. I always find that to be fascinating. But to straight up, because there's also when Steven Seagal did. It's a Bird.
Yeah.
Which is really good. That's a really good hardcover. It's funny how DC's the one that does this. I don't know. Has Marvel ever done a like self-insert story about somebody working on a Marvel project? Like,
Right.
or working
First
at
of all,
Marvel?
we could probably narrow this down by just going, it's got to be about Jim Shooter. So whatever. And I think
I
that's
think
true.
Bendis did appear in. But Marvel's different when they do it because they do the whole like funny bullpen stuff.
They put you in
And
it.
they did
You're a character
yeah,
that literally works for Marvel Comics, and you're in the book.
yeah.
I mean,
Somewhere in here on this shelf right here, I have Marvel Team Up, the hardcover
Yeah.
they did for Ultimate Marvel Team Up.
Yes.
And I think one of those issues actually has Bendis in it, or he introduces the story. Like in
Yes.
Ultimate Spider-Man, when him and Nick Lowe
are
switched.
like in a headlock and they swap
Yeah,
Wolverine and
yeah,
Spider-Man. Joe Quesada's in
yeah.
that book as well, the Ultimate Marvel Team Up as
Yeah.
well. I think it's either Joe or Axel Alonso where he's on the phone and he's like begging directors to make Marvel movies. Like, I think Scorsese would make a great Daredevil movie. Come on.
Somewhere in here, I have that like. What did I do with that? I have like that like. There was a hardcover that Marvel did, and it was like the adventures of Joe and Bill Jemas. It was like Bill. It was like Bill and Joe. This is gonna drive me crazy because I know I have it somewhere. It's like it. What did I do with that? But they did this book. It was actually really interesting because it was a bit of a like behind the scenes thing of like celebrating those first couple of years of what they did with Marvel, like Marvel Knights, Ultimate, like all of it. But yeah, now I'm super curious. I have to find that. Find that. But I wonder if Marvel's ever done anything like that. Marvel doesn't do as many standalone graphic novels. So that's part of it.
And that's
DC
like
has always done stuff like that. Yeah.
I mean, maybe I was thinking about Silver Surfer Requiem, like how that's kind of Stan talking about like he's is that the one with Mobius where he's like trying to talk about like God and your place in the universe, which is not too dissimilar from Bill Jemas' Marvel, where it's like I read a book about the origin of the species and now I'm going to talk about it, and it's
so if you had a vote, right now, I'm putting you on the spot. Because I know what I voted for. I remember we had all kinds of conversations about this
between the three?
at the comic shop I worked at. Yeah, if you had to vote between Marvel, Ultimate Adventures, or Captain Marvel, what will you have picked?
I mean, probably Captain Marvel because it's the only actual comic book on the list. Like Ultimate Adventures is
a comic book.
Yes, but it's made for it. Like it's made specifically to be this like thing that is supposed to prove that Peter David shouldn't get what he wants, which is 25 cents less on the book. Like,
yeah, but people don't know there was a thing where Marvel basically did like an internal contest, and it was whichever one of these sells most. So it was a book called Marvel. There was a book called Ultimate Adventures, which was basically Ultimate Batman and Robin. And then there was that took place. It was Night Owl, right? It wasn't Night Owl. What was his name?
It was Night. It was maybe it was Nighthawk, but it was I don't remember who it was specifically, but Ultimate Marvel Adventure or
Yeah, it was. But then you had I'm blank. I thought I still have that trade. And it's Captain Marvel, which was Peter David's book at the time with Crisscross, and it was
Hawk Owl. His name was Hawk Owl.
Hawk Owl. Well, The Captain Marvel book was good. The
Yeah,
Captain Marvel book was good, and I think it was interesting. I always wonder about like the backstory on that, and I know enough people. I should find out. Like,
yeah.
was that all one big? Like, how petty was that dispute?
Well, if
Was
you
it all a
read,
big promotional? Go ahead. Go
oh
ahead.
no, it was Peter David. Like Peter David on his "But I Digress" blog
Yeah, yeah,
in
yeah.
the year 2002 wrote about it, and he said like they wanted to increase the price of the books by 25 cents, and Peter David said if you increase the price on Captain Marvel by 25 cents, the book will be canceled because no one will buy it because 25 cents
Mhm.
is just unpalatable to our audience. And Jemis was like,
He's not necessarily wrong.
I was like 25 cents. That's hilarious, but in today's world, but like
Yeah.
yeah, no, Jemis was like he I if you look inside Marvel and you see that Peter David is in that book and he is identified as Peter A. David and he is a homeless vagrant that's begging for change. That says to me that it is 100% a smear campaign. I mean, like there's so much. You want to talk about Spielberg
Oh
putting
my
himself on
god.
screen? Somebody put themselves in every page of that book in the form of like it's supposed to be like a takedown. You know, it's a takedown of like all the people who wronged me or gave me a hard time. And like Paul Levitz is named. Just he's named. Ted Turner's a
Uh,
character, and he's married
I
to
remember Ted
Jane
Turner being a
Fonda.
character, and it was
Like
AOL. Yeah, it was AOL Comics and everything.
AOL Comics.
I was still working at the store, and I just find that whole era fascinating. Where it was like, I think that's the only era, and I might be wrong in this, and someone will correct me, where like wrestling style, like cutting
Promotion.
promos was happening, and I at the time I think it definitely was working.
Right, it was getting
Like
attention.
it was getting attention. I mean, that's something I think you and I talked about before about how like I think the best eras of comics. I might be wrong on this, but like I just think it's interesting when there's moments where the publishers have a voice, like a person. You know,
Yes.
like and Marvel had Joe Quesada and they had Bill, and even after Bill was gone, it was Joe. You
Yep.
know, Joe, and then it was Axel, and even but then you had creators. You had like at Marvel, particularly, had Bendis. You know, and
Yeah.
I think this is something at DC where it's like you had these moments where it was. DC didn't have that for a long time until Dan.
Until
You
Dan.
know, and
And
then Dan,
Dan
yeah,
and
Dan did it for
because you
20
only
years, pretty
well, and
much.
all you had was Dan, so Dan got to be the boogeyman of DC Comics, where like
Yeah, he
everything
also
was
would take a
Dan's
lot of
fault.
it was something that I realized after Dan was gone was how much Dan also was like you said, he was the boogeyman, but he also was taking hits for other people. Like there were
Exactly.
times where once I got into DC, I'd be like, "Well, this is a Dan idea," and they're like, "Actually, no, that wasn't a Dan idea. That was this creator's idea." And then it's a secret,
Yep.
and then Dan just took the bullet for him, you know. And it was
Exactly.
always like it really was very interesting, like to see that stuff. But
Yeah. Oh, but,
um,
to answer your
yeah,
question, looking at the cover of Ultimate Adventures, I probably would have voted for Ultimate Adventures just to see what
oh,
Marvel's
it's so
Batman would have
fascinating.
been like. I've read it, and it's not
That
what
book
I would
has
want.
great art in it, though. It's Duncan Ferdego, and it just looks
Yeah.
amazing. Like
Yeah.
that book is really interesting, and it's kind of funny. You
Yeah.
know, it's at least kind of funny.
What did I
But I
vote?
was a big Captain Marvel fan, so
So that would have been your
like
vote.
I definitely voted for that and voted.
By
I working
buying
at a
it.
comic book store, and I was like, we should order more of that one, and it caused like a whole conversation in the shop of like,
Interesting.
but Ultimates at the time was such a hot brand. I remember the retailer
Yes.
was like, I don't know, like Ultimates is really hot, and you know, it was a whole thing. But
Yeah. But
that's
nobody
a
ordered
whole other
Marvel, and for the best because, that was
no.
also very much, apparently Jemis had a real, like, idea. He was very much inspired by magazine covers, and that's why all of Ultimate Spider-Man for the first, like, 20 issues looks like just poses of Spider-Man because he's like, "I don't cotton to the idea of a comic book cover being all busy and full of junk like they have in the
That's
past."
really
So
interesting. I didn't know that. Like, I was
yeah.
always wondering why those issues were just. It was fascinating because I remember at the time I was working at the store, and I was like, they're gonna run out of colors on the side of this book real quick.
Uh-huh.
Like,
Yeah.
I was
Now, by the way,
like,
that was,
the
that's a
orange one is the expensive one. In case you
right.
didn't know that, the orange one is
Yes.
the rare one
Oh,
because
I
that
didn't
was
know
when
that.
they.
Okay.
Oh yeah, at some point the the demand and the print run did not meet on one
Mhm.
issue. I think it might be 5 or 7.
Yeah.
And it's the orange one, it has the orange bars. So if you ever go back and look at Ultimate Spider-Man issues, there's
Yeah.
always one that is oddly more than the rest, and that was why because the print run at the time, it was like because they were printing things and just the hype of things. It was like
Yeah.
when that book ramped up in popularity, it suddenly hit a moment where they had actually lowered the print run. And so
Ah,
there's just one moment where it's like you look at if you I imagine the print one probably went like this, whoop, and then back up to the next issue, right? So it's just
yeah.
one issue where the print run is low, and so it's always
Well,
yeah,
and
yeah. I had 2 copies of that,
oh,
and I remember
nice. You
I sold
had
both of them, but well, I sold my collection. Like I sold my
really?
single issue collection. Oh yeah, I sold my whole collection back in 2008. So I still have a lot of stuff, right? So if
That's
it was
relatively
signed
recently.
2008,
Yeah. I mean, it feels pretty
2008
recent.
feels like a long
Well,
time ago, dude.
yeah, I
For
guess
me,
that's
trust me,
true.
that was like lifetimes ago. I
Life
feel like for
yeah,
me.
yeah. Well, my point being, like, so you've been without your single issue collection since 2008. Like, do you miss it?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Have you
Yes.
thought
I'll be
about Kevin
honest. Yes.
Smithing and getting it back?
No. It has come up
Now
a
that you
few
got
times.
your extra room.
When the office is finished being built, I'm actually gonna probably purge again after that because I
Oh,
feel like that room is fairly large.
but it
I'm
will
building an
fill up.
office. Yeah, it's gonna fill up, but like this stuff and everything. I mostly have all the trades, and I have a lot of hardcovers, and I have a lot of collectible stuff. Single issues, I usually when I do get single issues, I usually buy a lot of number ones.
Yeah.
But I mostly wait for trades. And there are some books like you and I were talking earlier, like about before we record, we were talking about Jason Aaron's Punisher. Like that's something I
Yes.
buy monthly in single issues. And
Nice.
it's weird because with DC, I get everything sent to me. So with Marvel and Image, I primarily work for trades. But Marvel, if I'm like digging a book, I will buy the single issues.
Same.
Um, there's a few other ones, like I'll say even with DC, where it was like, I would get sent copies of World's Finest as
Yeah.
part of that download, right? But it's like Dan Moore's art is so great, I would go buy it at the comic shop too, right? So I would
Yeah.
go pick that up, and it just depended what. But yeah, so when I sold my collection, it it was the right thing to do in the moment. There are times I miss it because I had like, I had
Some
a very
keys.
significant, yeah, I had some stuff like even with something like Amazing Spider-Man,
Yeah.
which you and I've talked about. Like, I had everything from the first appearance of the Scorpion to present day. I had all of
Oh
it,
my god.
and so I was missing like the first 20 issues basically. I was missing because that's 20, so I was missing the first 19, which it was
Yeah.
like I don't know how I was going to get that, but I had them, and
Yeah.
that was after years of collecting and being like, I'm getting this. I still have some really early issues of X-Men. Like I have X-Men number 3 and X-Men number
Ooh.
5 and number 8. But I have a couple early Hulks and a couple early Iron Mans. This is all Marvel stuff. With DC though, so DC was weird. I kept Batman, I kept Detective, I kept Flash. Like those are the 3
Yeah.
that I actually kept. Which Superman was essentially a weekly book that was impossible for me to keep. But
Well, and if you ever
you
wanted
know,
one single issue of Superman from 1994 to the
oh,
year
I'll be able to find
1999,
it. Yeah,
you'll be
yeah,
able to get a copy.
I'll be able to
I'll give
find
you
it.
a
Yeah,
couple. I have a few.
I'm not, but I think there are times it's weird because with these collections you don't look at them half the time.
No, that's right.
So it is weird when you're like, oh, do I regret selling it? No, I don't. But there are
Yeah, because you
times
don't
where I'm
see it.
like, yeah, and every once in a while, because I do still have a collection. I do.
I do, but
I still have a collection, but it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
the massive thing I had before. Now it's like, again, any book that I ever got signed,
Yes.
any book that for whatever reason is like special to me. So it's
Mhm.
like I said, Batman. So like Batman and like the Batman Detective and Flash. I kept those. I
Yeah.
kept some key Superman books. Some things that I was like, those are ones that are important to me. Get anything was signed. Spider-Man 2099. I kept all of that just because I love that book. So
Yes.
I did a reread on it recently, and I
Still
was
holds
like,
up, right?
man,
It's not
holds
bad.
up really well. Holds really
That
well.
series.
Once you get past 25 and you start getting
Yes.
deep into like the crossover stuff, and like at the time when Doom took over the United States, it was cool.
Yes.
But when you get to that, when you're rereading Spider-Man, you're like, oh man, you could tell where Peter David was like, this is getting to be a bit much, and you can
Yeah.
tell. But what also sucks is if you don't have. So let's say you go right now to the app and you're like, I'm gonna read all the Spider-Man 2099 on Unlimited.
Yeah.
As we read it, you hit a point where it's like, wait a minute, this is all crossing with all these other books. None of those books are on the app.
Yeah, you can't get
So
Punisher, Doom, Hulk, like
they did a crossover. It was called Fall of the Hammer. And
yeah.
all of those Fall of the Hammer issues are on the app, but it's the only
Oh.
issue. So that's the only issue of Ravager. It's on there. It's the only
Oh,
issue of.
wow.
Dude, it was crazy. The other day, I was telling you this earlier. I was thinking about What the, and so I was like, I'm gonna go look at What the, and it was like really weird to me because when I was a kid,
Yeah.
I remember buying a copy of What the, remember it was the only time I ever like straight up bought a copy of What the. I probably had a couple little issues here and there that I got for whatever reasons. Like I used to buy those giant bundles of comics
Yep.
that you get at Costco. So, but there was one copy of What the had Milk and Cookies on the cover. It was a crossover with Infinity War at the time. Might have been Infinity Crusade, but I think it was Infinity War. And it was like a joke about events and crossovers and stuff. And I had that one issue. And again, Milk and Cookies are on the cover. Thought it was really funny. The other day, so I've read that issue a bunch.
Yeah.
The other day, I was like, oh, I wonder what issues of What the are on the app. It's only one issue of What the is on the app, and it's that one issue. By total coincidence, it's the one issue. But anyway, yeah. No, I got rid of the collection. There are times I don't know. Now it's tough because it's like if I have to look something up, it's easy. It's available. I can go find it, But
yeah.
I think just having some of that stuff. I mean, I don't know when the new office is built, I'm gonna go through everything and I'm gonna really take a look at stuff, and that's when I'll decide what I'm keeping, what I'm getting rid of, and
Right.
definitely do a big purge. I actually watched, as you and I talked about before a few different times, is that like I really like Secret Galaxy, Dan Larson's show.
Dan Larson's channel, yes.
And he did a whole video about how he sold his toy collection.
Yep.
And he's done it a couple of times, but he was talking about how he was buying 3 of everything.
Yeah.
And he said it got out of control. And
It'll
watching
get out of
his
control
video,
fast.
watching his video talking about it, it really made me be like, you know what? I'm probably due for a purge of some kind. I've told you before, what you see behind me is nothing. Like
No,
this is
exactly.
a fraction of what I have. So it's that thing of like, not only will I probably do another round of comics, I'll probably definitely get rid of some toys, some other stuff. Usually with hardcovers and trades, I usually keep. It depends, unless I'm like, I will never look at this again.
Because we like talk about them for a living. Like I keep so many hardcovers and trades. Like I just did an inventory, and we have over 2,000 hardcovers and trades in the library right now. Like we have 2,200 trades, and let me tell you something. Like there's more over there that aren't on the shelves, and I'm just like, and there is an entire. By the way, that does not include the Batman stuff. Batman is its own section because I couldn't fathom having just a wall of bees, so I just put it all over there.
I have this entire shelf right here. You can't see, but I have a whole shelf right here. It's 1, 2, 3. I guess it's 6 shelves.
Yeah,
tall bookcase. It's just Batman, and that's not even all the Batman I have. Like I have so much more Batman, and I guess that counts because I have like Birds of Prey, Catwoman, Nightwing.
Me too. Yeah,
Robin,
no, I put all
trades over here. Yeah, it's all in one section. Yeah.
Yep.
And then this is like DC stuff. But even then, it's like with the new office that's going to be built, I'm going to have a much more extensive library.
Yeah.
And then it's going to be really interesting to be like, because I think at that point I'm just going to straight up alphabetize it.
We try to do that, but I have to add 100 more trades to the damn thing, and I'm like, well, that's over.
I have a question for you about Batman trades, and then we should talk about Superman.
Yes.
So here's my question for you about your Batman trades. What order do you put them in?
There is no order. Right now, the order is hardcovers on the top, floppies on the bottom, and the 80s to 90s prestige, like the perfect binding, thin one-shots.
Yeah.
Those are one section. But there is no order. There's no rhyme or reason. I thought about it for a minute, and I'm like, I'm not even going to try. So it just goes, especially because every week, my wife and I go get burgers and also shop for comics, and there is a half-off trade section that always gets replenished. And I'm like, well, War Games, I got to get War Games. So now War Games is on the shelf, and like, where does that go? It goes wherever I can fit the damn thing. I selectively moved, like I had statues there. Like I have a great Harley Quinn animated series statue that's up there. I have Kevin Smith's shoes. I know that sounds really weird, but like he did a trivia night at one of his venues down in South Jersey, and one of the prizes was a pair of Batman '89 inspired like Nikes or something that he was given by Warner's or something. And so I won that, and so I have Kevin Smith's shoes over there, and so I had to move those out of the way to make room for more Batman trades. It's overwhelming, and it's because Batman sells. Like Batman is like the pillar
as we discussed. It's one of the ones that's a common. It's gonna sell.
I have to do Batman, like, and I've tried to like keep that kind of like schedule going. Where like every 4th episode that we do, I'm like, well, Batman. But it can't just be like
Oh, it's
Batman
interesting.
does something. Like, it has to be like something. It's got to have a big sexy hook. So I'm,
Yeah.
it's rough.
I put my Batman trades right now. They're kind of disorganized, but when I reorganize them, I put them in, and I kid you not, because it's
Yeah.
the easiest way for my brain to figure out where stuff is.
Hmm.
I put them in chronological order,
Oh God.
uh, by like story.
Yeah.
So not just like when they came out, which actually I could
No.
probably do that too, but in chronological order by story. So it's like at the very top, I have like year one. Actually, at the very top, I put a lot of stuff. It's like pre-crisis stuff because
Yeah.
that's
That doesn't matter. Yeah,
easier to
because that's
do. Yeah,
yeah.
but
That's
once you
easier to
get
do.
to like this is it, it's like nope. Here's year one. Here's Long Halloween. Like I
Oh my
put them in
God.
order of chronological. It gets real muddy the deeper you get in. But
Yeah.
there's also a game to it because you're like, when did this shit happen?
Right. Like
You're
what?
like,
Well, and
when
what do you
did
do
this
with
happen?
what do you do with Gordon
Yeah.
of Gotham, which is a
Oh.
anthology collection that has like
Mhm,
5
mhm,
different
mhm.
continuities or stories with, in which Batman and
Well,
Gordon do things.
I kind of it depends, right? Because you can't put in like so. For example, like that is a book I would put with other Gordon books. So like Nightwing, Birds of Prey, Robin. I put those.
GCPD.
Yeah, I put those on their own thing because it is like that's where it gets real muddy. There's no
Yeah.
way, but for the most part, I try to put it in it. It's sometimes the easiest way for my brain to be like, okay, where is No Man's Land? All right, it's right there because I know this.
Well,
You know
because
what I mean?
it's
You're like, yeah, yeah, because you could figure it out. Well, also No Man's Land is like
there's
a
so
bunch of
many of them.
traits.
There's like none
Yeah.
trade. Like I actually, it's one of the few I don't. The only one I don't have the collection for is Nightfall, and it's because
What?
I've been
There's
there.
like there's like 10. There's like
I
10 different
know,
versions of
I
it.
know, and I
I have
can't.
two of volume one by accident. I don't even know
Yeah.
why.
I have like a volume 3 and that's it. And I'm just because I read it, I'm like, I don't need to ever return to Nightfall. I'm good. But I did
Oh my
keep No
god.
Man's Land just in case. And it's funny because No Man's Land is one of those things. There's 2 Batman books that haunt me as far as like covering that on our channel, and it's No
Mhm.
Man's Land and it's Batman Odyssey. Um, and it's just because I try at least a little bit to come across like I know what I'm talking about,
Mhm. Mhm.
but I can't
So
with
like I have
Bat.
to read these books.
But Batman Odyssey, I've read it 3 times, and I'm like, I don't know. I can't go, well, obviously this is because there's like 3 different timelines in Odyssey, and they're all like happening at the
It's a
same
lot going
time.
on.
It's not going on,
Yeah.
but but I need to keep it straight, and I still am working on that. And No Man's Land is one of those things where I was recently reading a thing somebody was talking about, like, should I read No Man's Land? If you go to Reddit and ask like the comic book community stuff, it's so great. Every day there's a new post that just says, should I read comic books? And I'm like,
Yeah, and
every
you're like,
day?
yes. As
Yeah,
long as you're paying cash money for them. Yes,
right.
please
Go to your local comic book store.
go buy a book. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
No, you shouldn't. You should pre-order your comic books. But
Yeah, oh boy,
there's
I wish.
yeah, yeah, I know. But somebody asked about No Man's Land, and I was surprised by the overwhelming consensus where they went, yes, you should read No Man's Land, but after like the 3rd volume, you can just stop. And I'm like, whoa, 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 because you got to get to Joker.
Yeah, you know
And it's like,
how they made all of these like they make all these like animated adaptations of Batman stories?
oh, the
That's one I
books.
would kind of love to
Oh,
see
the animated, yes.
because I would like to I would love to see just someone try to compress that down in 90
Yeah.
minutes. Like how do you compress this down where it's like so first we had contagion, then there's
Yes.
an earthquake, and then the government is like, bye,
Don't go in there.
Gotham.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
we're done
I've been
here,
looking for an
and then you have
excuse,
all the Lex Luthor stuff of it all,
which
right?
is good
Like,
stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
you have all this stuff, but and then you have like the new Huntress and then Harley
Yeah.
Quinn, like you had all this stuff, not new Huntress, sorry, new
Cassie.
Batgirl. Then, yeah, you
Yeah.
had all these things kind of in this little moment. It was Huntress, that's why I got
It was
confused.
Huntress, yeah, it was bad.
Spoilers. Originally, the new Batgirl was Huntress.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I would love to know this little pocket. Like, how do you compress all of that down? Because that's one of my that's one of my favorite like Batman status quo changes. I
Easily.
love that thing. Like,
Yeah.
it's so much. It was such a cool like, oh, this is happening, and it was fun and different. But it was just really good. Also,
And they
as we were talking about
committed.
earlier, they
Yeah.
committed. Well, I love Escape from New York, and so
Yeah.
that's also like we were talking about earlier. I was watching some of it last night, and it's like I love that movie. So you're basically saying like, oh, it's Batman with Escape from New York. I'm fucking here. Let's do this.
Fucking
I'm ready
sold.
to go.
Immediately.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But how do you compress that down into 90 minutes? I would love that. Like I was watching I haven't watched all of Sandman yet on Netflix.
No,
And
yeah.
so last week I was like, all right, I'm gonna watch a bunch of episodes in a row, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna get to the John D episode at least, right?
Yes.
Get that far in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I had read, I read Sandman a few different times, and I had reread some of Sandman last year, just for fun, you know.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, like it's still pretty fresh, and I flipped through
Yeah.
it recently for something, so I'm like, oh, it's still pretty fresh, so I'm gonna watch this, and it was fascinating to me the choices they made and
Yeah.
how they were able to adapt certain things and twist them and change things around. I was like, this is one of the best because I've only watched the first five. I haven't watched all of it. I've only watched the first five so far.
Yeah.
I will probably watch the rest of it this weekend. But when I watched those first five, I was like, this is one of the best, like, yeah, adaptations where it
Yeah.
was like somebody because they were playing with your expectations. So it was like even if you hadn't read the books, there
Yeah.
was still a level of tension. You understood what's going on. They were kind of
Mm-hmm.
able to like mess with you what you want to do, right? Like you want
Yeah.
to make it so it's a thriller, and it is a horror thing at the end of the day, right? So you're like
Oh, absolutely.
all these pieces that work, but also for me to be like, I know this story,
Yeah.
and for them to be like, no, we're gonna twist it on you a little bit, like we're gonna
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna mess with you. So you're sitting there being like, so again, I haven't finished it, so I can't go too deep into it, but
Yeah.
it was just fascinating to watch that. And that's something with No Man's Land. I would love to see somebody come in and do like a 90-minute No Man's Land thing and be like, how do you fit this all
Right. What do you
into
pick? What
90
do you
minutes would be
choose?
fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Yeah.
there's some
What do you
obvious
cut
stuff you
out?
can
Yeah.
skip. I mean, Penguin,
Hmm.
the Penguin story, the Catwoman story, you could cut.
You'd have to ignore a lot. I mean, you probably have to do exactly what you said. You probably have to jump. You probably have to jump. And
Yeah,
I think the question I would have,
yeah,
you probably have to cut Harley,
yeah.
even though that was when Harley was introduced to the main line.
Right.
And you probably would have to cut the Batgirl stuff. Like you'd
Absolutely.
have to cut, or Batwoman, I think, is what she was
No, it's
calling herself. I don't
Batgirl.
remember,
Well,
but it
she was
was
Batman.
Batgirl.
No,
But
she was impersonating Batman, and then
oh,
it's
that's right.
revealed that she's a woman. I no, you could. Okay,
Man,
your choices are you either do Batman. You're like, I'm making a Batman adaptation, or
yeah,
the point of the movie is to introduce the new Batgirl.
yeah. You do
Like,
it. You do it from Cassie. Well, you do it from Cassie's perspective, and you make it
basically, yeah.
her. I mean, you look at the video games, and you look at Arkham City and all that kind of stuff, and those are different. Those are expansive. Those are much
Yes.
longer than 90 minutes. You're talking about like those are like 10-hour
Hours,
plus
10 hours
movies.
of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're like I mean, that's like a weekend of your life, or like at least for
Uh-huh.
me, that's. I, this is going to be like a nerdy thing to get into. Whenever I would play those Batman Arkham games,
Yeah.
this is before I had children, so I would make a decision, like I'm going to start this on Friday and I'm done by Sunday night. Like,
Mm.
and I'm basically going to do this, and that's how I would play them because I was so interested in the story. I didn't want to be
Yeah.
like,
What
oh, I
happened?
play
Where
this
was
a
I?
month from now,
Yeah.
like what I mean, because that's how, at least with me with video games, it's always been this way where it's like either I power through and I get it done in a few days or a week or so,
Yep.
or it takes me like a year to
Yeah.
play it, and then I'm playing, and then the story gets kind of defeated. So it was like Uncharted was like this, where Uncharted I would power through Uncharted,
Yeah.
um, but Arkham, those Arkham games, I mean, those games are definitely on Arkham City.
Yeah.
Like Arkham City was one where I was definitely playing that at like 4 in the morning,
Oh,
just
yeah.
sitting there, just powering through.
Collecting
Arkham,
yeah.
yeah, Arkham Knight came out right before I got married, and so it was long enough where I still had time.
Yeah.
And before I had the kids and stuff like that, so that's like one of the that was I remember getting to that one and being like, boom, did it. I actually have in my office right now. I have the new one, the Gotham Knights one. I have
Oh,
like the
yeah.
giant collectible box. I still haven't even opened it. Like
Yeah.
at some point I will, and then at some point I'll play it. But
Yeah.
anyway, we should talk about Superman
Yes. Superman,
because you read it. Yes, and it's
I
coming
did,
out today.
I read it,
It
it's
came out
out today, we
today.
can talk about it
Yes.
now.
Yeah, we can talk about it.
Dude, getting, first of all, this is such a love letter, to your version of Superman, to your I think it's like your vision of Superman. This is like who you
Hmm.
see when you're like, all right, well, when I'm talking about Superman, this is my Superman.
Hmm.
But getting Jamal Campbell to show it, hell
I
yeah.
lucked out. I lucked out. I feel like when I got the job, I wasn't sure what I was going to do at first. When they
Yeah.
came to me and they're like, "Do you want to do Superman?" And I was like, "I don't know." And I was like, it's always tough when you get a job with these superhero characters, especially if you're a nerd like me, where it's like,
Right.
I know all the best Superman stories. I've read them. and you're like, I'm not gonna do what Grant did. I'm not gonna do All-Star Superman. And that was actually one of the rules I had. So I actually started. I have a notebook. I got this notebook. I probably told you this before. I have this Daily Planet notebook, and I
Oh,
actually had this before I got the job. And so I actually was like, I'm using this, and
nice.
I just writing down ideas and notes and thoughts, and I'd already had Superman ideas in the past. But I'm like, okay, how do I work this out? Like I had
Yeah.
stories about Superman. I'm like, okay, do I use this? Do I not use this? What works? And one of the rules I had really early on for myself was no Grant and no Jeff,
Okay.
because I've definitely been guilty of referencing and riffing on Jeff stuff a lot, and with Grant a little bit, especially with Damien and a little bit with the Crisis stuff. So it was like with this one, I was like, I have to find a way of making it about the core of the character and
Yep.
making it about this is who Superman is, have all the toys, all the pieces on the table, this is who he is, but moving into the new. So a
Yes.
lot of the ideas I had were not about like referencing old stories, not
Mhm.
referencing old characters, just really being like, okay, we all know who he is. Superman's Clark Kent,
Yep.
the Daily Planet, here's Lois, here's Jimmy, and then find ways of moving the ball forward. I thought
Yes.
it's a lot, and so with this book, I remember I wrote this long, like 10-page document, just like all these ideas, not even story. It was just like these are my thoughts on the book. And
Mm.
I remember giving it to Jamal, and the first time Jamal and I talked, we were just like automatically on the exact same page. They were
Yeah.
like, "Here, my thoughts on it. Here, what I'm thinking." We talked a lot about the animated series, but it was like Jamal was, I think, the perfect person, like the perfect artist, to
Yeah.
really take those ideas that I was trying to get across and really boil them down and then make them real. And that's what you see in that first issue, where it's like
Yeah.
it feels familiar, but it looks new. And
Right.
that was what we were going for with a lot of this, was like, I didn't want it to be like I've read this story before. I
And
wanted to
there
be like, how do I move it forward a little bit? Yeah.
exactly. And their status quo shifts, their changes, like because
Uh,
you could easily say like, so we're gonna put the identity back in the box and
yeah.
everything's gonna go back to the way it was. But because of the identity shift and because of the status quo for Perry, we get a chance to change
Mhm.
things for Lois, which changes
Yeah.
and it has ripple effects, right? Every significant change to every character has ripple effects throughout. And because Lois
Yeah.
is like no longer relegated to being a second stringer or a supporting character, like she is a
Mhm.
protagonist in the Superman books. She's been that way for
Yeah.
a while.
Yeah.
Um, but she will have a profound effect on Superman, Clark Kent's life,
Yeah.
Jimmy, and any of the other supporting characters that may hove into her field of influence. Um, and I love that shift for her and where we're going with
Yeah.
it. And like I want to see that, and I want to see where that goes. Like,
Yeah.
and
Well,
I yeah,
yeah, it's her idea of becoming like making her editor in chief, and Lois is like, it's a cage. She says it in the issue.
yeah,
It's like Perry's office, and she's still calling it Perry's office, even though it's her
right.
office,
Aw.
is like a cage for her,
Yeah,
and that hunger she has for like, I have to go find a
chase the
story, I have
story.
to invest. Yeah, like that's like always does with Lois. It's gonna get her in trouble.
Yeah,
But I think there's other stuff with her that we're gonna do, and other things about like her take on some of the stuff that's happening with Lex, but also some of the decisions she's gonna make, just as editor in chief.
yeah,
Some of them are gonna be controversial decisions, but
right.
she's basically put in a position, and this is actually part of what this story's about in some ways. Is like,
Yeah,
you know, when you're put in the position where you are now the boss,
yeah,
it does change your point of view on certain things. And so
right.
Lois being put in position as a boss, it's going to change your point of view on certain things. And at some
Mhm.
point, she's going to have to say, I have to make a controversial decision because it's what's best for the paper,
Exactly.
right? And then you have Clark, who, when Lex gives him LexCorp,
Yeah,
is now also put in a position where he is being looked at, even though Mercy is essentially running day to day.
yeah.
He's being put in a position where people are looking at him not just for, hey, can you
Get
go
my
out and
cat away
stop this?
free, save
Yeah,
us from inner
yeah,
gang.
stop
Like,
a meteor or something like that. It's like there's other things that are going to come a part of that, and also, you know, he. eh, it's a thing I have in life where I try not to count people out,
right.
right? Like people can surprise you, and I
Yes.
think a lot of cases there are people that are maybe too far gone, but
Mhm.
Superman has faith in everyone and humanity. He tries to see the best of them, and he hopes for the best for them.
Yeah.
And then there's Lex Luthor,
Right.
and it's like they have this relationship that goes so far back. So for him to be, looking at Lex and him saying, like, I feel like Lex is the only person I've ever given up on.
Yeah.
and Lex saying, "Please give me a second chance," basically in a lot of ways. But
Yeah.
he's still Lex Luthor. He's
He's
still
got to
Lex
be
Luthor.
Lex Luthor about it.
Yeah, he's gotta be Lex Luthor. And so I wanted to play with a lot of that stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, no, and there's like the first issue is phenomenal. It's great, and it alludes to all the other stuff because there's a lot of stuff going on in the Superman family and the Superman world
Yeah.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
that other folk are tackling. And
Mhm, mhm.
there's actually an entire splash that just says like this is the Philip Kennedy Johnson book. If you want to read it, go ahead.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. It's like I want to acknowledge what he's doing, and we talk and stuff, and
yeah,
it's like, he's focusing a bit more on, well, obviously Metallo,
yes,
but he's focusing on this family aspect and the new super twins and Kara and like
Ken and
Kong, and
Kong,
then
and
you have
yeah,
John, and you have like obviously Connor in there. Connor is going to be
yeah,
a big part of his book, and he has some stuff with that we've been talking about. And you know, I wanted to basically say like these books are taking place. It's interesting because you want those books to have connective tissue, and you want
yeah,
to like acknowledge each other, but we're not doing the thing that they did in the '90s, where Superman was basically a weekly book.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I
and
mean,
it
don't get
was
me wrong, I love that stuff, but these books needed to stand alone a little bit
exactly,
more, and that's what we talk.
yeah.
It's kind of like you're not going to see Metallo showing up in my book doing something completely different.
Right, he's a different character, got a
That's
different skin, like,
yeah. Suddenly, I have like a different Metallo show up. We're not doing anything like that, but
yeah.
um, but yeah, Jamal killed it. I got my copies, and
Oh,
it's so crazy. I'm
great.
gonna tell you something about this one that this is maybe a minor thing that I think is really cool about this.
Yeah.
There are no ads in this book.
Oh,
Dude, look at that. It just goes straight through. It's all
that's
story,
awesome.
all the way through from cover to cover. There's an ad on the second. There's an ad on the inside front cover, and an
Okay.
ad on the inside back cover. Otherwise, yeah, it's all. And then you have the foil edition, looks really nice.
Ooh,
But no ads.
that's awesome.
No ads.
And
You
is
just
that gonna
straight through
be
story.
is that the version you have, or is that the version we're getting?
That's the printed version you're getting.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, it's straight up, and it's just Jamal just killing it for
Yeah,
30 pages, just 30 pages of cool comics. And we
true.
tease a bunch of stuff. There's like the new villains that we're introducing in this issue.
Well, and reintroducing,
And
you got Livewire in this book.
oh yeah, I wasn't sure if I was going to get Livewire, because Livewire could be tricky because she's technically, she was created for the cartoon. She wasn't
Yeah,
created in the comics. It's kind of like anything that was created anything that was created by a different department, you have to make sure you get permission for it. So if it was made by
interesting.
film, TV, video game, you have to get permission for it. And
Wow.
so with Livewire, we were able to get permission to use her. It's not hard. You just ask.
Yeah.
You just ask. But we got permission for her, and I was like, this book is going to be funny because it's like every book I work on at DC, right? Like
Yeah.
if you read that book, you can kind of figure out what stories in the past I was a fan of.
Yeah.
So if you're reading Robin, you're like, oh yeah, he clearly liked that Green Arrow book. Like
Mhm.
you could tell like, oh, this is the stuff that he liked. And I think with this, you're very much so going to see that. You're going to be
Well,
like, oh, okay, he
there's an
likes
entire
Livewire books.
yeah, well, he
He
likes the
like
cartoon show. There's an entire sequence
yeah,
of, like,
there's definitely
wink.
that. Yeah, yeah, there's a little winks of the cartoon stuff in there, but you're gonna see like, oh, he likes these characters, and then
Yes.
but at the same time, with this one, it is about I'm challenging myself in different ways with this book, and
Okay.
I'm curious what people are gonna think of it because it's very much more. It's more of a pulpy take on Superman, right? Like
Mm.
it's me looking at it from a different point of view, and you know, you look at like Doc Savage kind of pulpy stuff, and so I'm looking at it from that. And I got so used to working on Dark Crisis, where Dark Crisis was like noisy all the time. It
Yes.
was noisy, it was loud, shit happened all the time. A million characters in it. With this one, I was like, okay, like it's Clark's point of view. Lex Luthor's around. Lex kind of plays this antagonist, protagonist kind of role
Yeah.
with his voice, because he's talking to Clark across it, and that's going to be a running theme is Clark and Lex talking
Yep.
throughout the book. And and then I was gonna be like, I'm gonna make this book a little weird at times. So like I'm
That's
always
great.
curious what I think of it, but I wanted to be like, and also we're doing shorter arcs where it's like a 3-issue arc, a 2-issue arc, so this is our first arc, where we introduce new villains, right? We
Yeah.
have 2 new villains we introduced at the ending, and then we have Parasite and Livewire, which even after these first 3 issues, they're gonna continue to be in the book.
Oh,
Like
cool.
Parasite and Livewire will be. And then you have In issue 2, we introduce a new like anti-hero hero character that's in Metropolis. That has like a long history with it. We also
Yeah.
have Lex. Like I'm putting a lot of stuff into this book, but there are gonna be like these short arcs. It'll be like a 3-issue, a 2-issue, a
I
3
love
issue,
that.
a 2
Now, is
issue.
that
Yeah.
influenced because of your previous reading habits? Because like when we were kids, like when we were teenagers, like
Yeah,
they
they
weren't
wanna know
afraid to
like,
go. You know, he's gonna fight Spider Slayers for 3 issues, and we're just gonna
you
move on.
know,
Like,
yeah, well, that's the thing, like, I think once you get past 2000, everything is like 5 or 6 issues, right? Because they
yep.
were writing
Well, they figured out the
trades.
math. They were like, all right,
Yeah. Yeah, well,
especially
what's
Superman.
interesting about that, and I was not great at this either, too. I think on Flash was weird because it was like we were double shipped. So even if it was 6 issues, that was 3 months.
Yeah,
So we were burning through stuff, and I always kind of saw every 6 issues as like, here's my A plot. Like here's my rogues for 6 issues. Here's
yeah,
Really Broad for 6 issues, even though that arc is actually really long. But I was like, here's always the little things we're gonna do. So with this one, I was like, I really want to just move faster.
ah,
And I'm like, all right,
ironically,
so yeah, I know. So shut the books, and I'm like, well, I learned a lot from it though. So
that's
it's like,
true.
3 issues of this, 2 issues of this, 3 issues of this, and then we alternate. And it is funny how every once in a while when you're like, you'll hear people go, you know what, I missed done in one issues. I missed done in one issues. You're like, me too. And you do a done in one issue, and the first thing you hear is, oh, this is a filler issue, and you're like, well, then what is it then?
Yeah,
But it's because the A plots. As long as your A plots move, your B and C plots can continue. So it's like the stuff with
exactly.
Lois being editor in chief will continue. The stuff with
Yeah,
Clark and Lex continues because that's the real B plot. And you have the stuff with Jimmy that's going to continue. You have
yeah,
the new villains. That story is going to be going on for a while. But I
right.
really want to do with this first issue, just kind of like put a lot of stuff on the plate right out the gate
Yeah.
and
Well,
move a little quicker.
right. But when were we going to get subterranean monsters again that live underneath Metropolis, like Clar and
Issue
stuff?
4, bro.
No,
Issue 4. Issue 4. We get all kinds of weird stuff. Like
like
I
Colossus and
really
whatnot. Yeah.
I was like, I guess I was thinking about like if Superman suddenly had control over LexCorp, what would he do? And like, what are
Oh,
those resources like? And then you find out that it's like, eventually this is spoiler stuff, but it's like you start to find out that like Lex had a bunch of stuff he was doing that nobody knew about, and now it's a problem. So
right.
you have to tackle that. And even in the first issue, I'm gonna get some spoiler stuff here for the first
Sure.
issue. It's like one of the things we're gonna talk about is that Lex, when Lex left Smallville, he came to Metropolis,
Metropolis. Yeah.
and he was there for a significant amount of time before Clark got there.
Yeah.
What happened in that time period?
Right. Yeah, we
Like,
don't really get a chance to see like the influence. Well, like because I think the implication is that like Lex built Metropolis into the city of tomorrow.
yeah, but
How?
like every city, there's
Yeah.
crime in that city, and so you
Right.
have this version of Lex where I think there's a reason Lex feels ownership over Metropolis, and why he feels
Yeah.
like I am the
Oh.
hero of Metropolis. There are reasons for that, and we're gonna talk about those reasons. And then it's like the secret history that a lot of people knew about. And
Yeah.
then Superman's gonna find out some of this stuff, but on top of that, Superman's gonna be like, "Wait, what were you doing?" Like he's gonna find out, like Lex, like most mad scientists, he's gonna be like, "Oh, did you think my full time job was trying to kill Superman? No,
I was
like,
very busy.
or
I
the
was
Justice League? No, 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 that was my night job.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
my
I do
day
so
job is
much.
all
Yeah.
of this." And then Clark's gonna find out what all this is and be like, "Oh my god,
Ugh.
like I have to deal with all of this." And so
Right. I gotta clean up like all this crap I didn't even know was under the surface.
existed. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff like that that comes up in the book, and so it's gonna be really fun having Clark kind of. I'm gonna run Clark through different genres,
Oh,
so it's like this arc has a little bit of horror, the next arc is a little bit of romance, and then so on and so forth. Like I'm gonna find. That's why at the ending I kind of just like straight up say some of the genres at the ending, um, because I was like, oh, I want to play around with these ideas, and so
yeah. No, that's great.
uh, yeah, I just want to have fun with it, and I really like Superman. I like Jamal's art, and I hope
Yeah.
people read this book. Comes out today, and I hope you buy it at your comic book store. And then, issue 2, the FOC is this weekend. And again, like we're introducing a new character in that issue, in issue 2, and it looks really cool. It's a great. I actually have to like turn in my lettering draft for it the moment you and
Ooh,
I are done talking. I got a text about it.
nice.
Because what we do is this is like insider stuff. We get the PDF. I get to read the book basically. So I
Yeah.
read the book and then I get to go through and make changes to it and be like,
Mm,
that line of dialogue sucks. Change it with this one. go through and make little adjustments. And I've already written it up. I literally just I have to hit send on it, and I forgot to hit send. So I'm gonna read through really quickly and hit send, so the letter can go in and change stuff and clean up some stuff. They check my typos, all that fun stuff.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, we try to catch all the typos. Let me tell you, anytime you ever see a typo in a comic, I promise you the creator already knows.
Right.
They
I've
already
seen it
know,
1,000
and
times.
and they already cried in the shower about it. It's totally fine.
Yep.
You don't have to let us know. I promise you've already seen it.
Right.
It's happened countless times where I've found a typo in a book after it was printed and been like, no.
Yeah.
And then a month
Now
later,
here's the
somebody's
thing.
like,
Do you then contact them and go like, so in the trade, could you fix this?
hell yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. If we can get it fixed in digital too, we get it fixed in digital. We get it. I'll email and be like, hey man, can you help me with this?
Oh, I remember that. Not to put too fine a point on it, but I remember that vividly during the first Snyder Joker arc in the New 52, when Joker was very familiar with Batman, and then in the digital version, suddenly he wasn't. And then people noticed, and then suddenly it was okay again for him to be more familiar with Batman. And
oh man, it's really funny. Yeah, they
was
changed
very
stuff up.
interesting.
Well, sometimes what happens, my intro. Sometimes what happens is that you're running on fire. These books have to come out.
Yeah.
And it has happened. It has happened where the digital version did not match the print because the digital version like got logged in basically before
it was like a previous print, like
a previous version that happened in to me on an issue of Flash. There is an issue of Flash. I'm not gonna say which one it is. Some people know there is an issue of Flash where the print version in the single issue, the trade version, and the digital version are different.
Oh my god!
On
you got 3 different versions of one issue.
Because I caught it in the issue, and then I said, "Can we correct this?" And they corrected it for the digital.
Right.
And there was some kind of miscommunication by the time I got to the trade, and they fixed it again, but they actually got it back to where it was in the bad version of it, but worse.
Oh my god!
So that is how there are 3 different versions of it. It drove me crazy when I finally looked at the tray. I knew it too. I got the tray and I flipped to that page and I was like, "Oh, you got it." Kidding me.
I have to assume that was the first thing you did.
Typo in a comic book, we're well aware.
Yeah, please keep it to yourself.
No. I hope no typos in Superman.
No,
I really hope no typos in Superman.
I've read it and I can tell you I've gone through it with a fine-tooth comb and it passes the smell test. I think it works out.
Good.
No, it's good stuff.
I'm glad you liked it, and we're announcing some more cool stuff for DC this week. When this airs, there'll be some more stuff, and we can talk about that in the next one.
That's right.
Next month. Yeah,
next month.
We'll do this again in a month. We'll come right back in, but you're gonna go see Ant-Man, and so am I.
That's right. Yeah, we're gonna go see Ant-Man.
Yeah, we're gonna go Ant-Man. Yeah.
We gotta go see MODOK on screen for the first time. Yay!
Is MODOK in it? No, I'm kidding.
Oh,
I've actually avoided I avoided almost everything. But what gets me is because I don't watch. I try to watch the superhero trailers because I'll see one thing and I'll start reading into it.
Of course, yeah.
But what happens is a lot of times toys.
Yeah.
Like toys are the giveaways. Like you'll see stuff where you're like, oh, I guess that character's in that movie. Like Hasbro's like, here, you want this new MODOK toy? Look at this. By the way, you should buy a MODOK toy. And I'm like you'll see an ad like that, like Ant-Man's coming out. Check out this MODOK toy. And I'm like, oh, okay, I know what's going on. But you never know. You never know. There might be all kinds of crazy stuff. I'm curious about this one. I really like the other 2 Ant-Man movies. So
me too.
I'm very curious about this one.
Yeah, I can't believe we didn't even touch the Flash trailer.
Oh, next time.
So that's incentive for you folks.
We're gonna be back here in a month. We should make a to-do list. We should be like, so the next one we need to talk about the following things. We got to talk about Green Arrow.
Yep, Green Arrow.
We got to talk about Green Arrow because I'll have Green Arrow #1. I mean, I have Green Arrow #1 done now, but we can talk about it next time. I'll let you read it, and then we can talk about the Flash trailer.
Yes, I think that'll
Flash trailer.
Yeah, if
that'll take a whole hour.
And then to keep our Peter Pan thing going. We'll talk about Fox's Peter Pan and the Pirates, which is another fantastic series.
I've never
really
the show or the movie,
the cartoon from
the cartoon.
From Fox
I've
Kids.
Never seen it. Never seen it. I did not know it existed until recently.
Until Secret Galaxy.
Until Secret Galaxy. Yeah, you know, man. Listen, pieces come together. Yeah, I know it existed until now. I have watched Jake and the Neverland Pirates with my son a few times.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that next time. I'm gonna try and
Exactly.
watch some of that cartoon. I actually haven't watched that Secret Galaxy episode yet. There's
Oh,
that
nice.
one, and there's the one about American Gladiators that he did,
Yes,
and I
me I
haven't
haven't
watched that
watched
one
that one either
either.
yet. No, I gotta
I
check that one out.
I was obsessed with American Gladiators when I was a kid, so I really want to see that one. I started to watch it a few weeks ago in the morning, or the morning after he put it up, and then
Yeah.
my son came running in the room and was like, "Mickey Mouse cartoons. We have to watch Mickey Mouse cartoons." I was like, "All right, cool." Which I'll leave you on that. I'll leave you on this. I'm gonna ask you this question: have you
Yep.
watched that Mickey Mouse cartoon? It's like Wonderful World of Mickey Mouse, and then there was one which is called Mickey Mouse, and there's one that's called Wonderful World of Mickey Mouse. Have you watched those yet?
I've seen the short ones where it's like that very simple art style that's like very like kind
Yeah,
of like off the wall.
but they're
Yeah,
like 2 or 3 minutes long.
yeah.
You gotta watch Wonderful World because those are 8 minutes long,
Okay.
and they're really funny. Uh, they're like they lean a little heavier into the like this is Mickey Mouse meets Ren and Stimpy. Like they lean way harder into it.
Okay.
You should definitely watch those, like the Wonderful World ones. Those are
Yeah.
really really funny, and there's one in particular you should watch. It's called Just the Four of Us,
Okay.
and I'm gonna leave it at that. Just the four
Okay.
of us, and then Once Upon an Apple. Those two are interesting. I'm gonna leave it
I
at that.
saw
You need to
someone
watch
mention
those.
Once Upon an Apple. I saw it like somewhere. It was floating around like in Twitter or something like that. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I have no context for it, so I will
You
definitely
should
check
check
that
those
out.
out. They're 8 minutes long. You can watch all of them in like an
Yeah,
hour
that's
or
a
two.
commitment. Yeah, that's not a
You
commitment.
should
I'm
do
down.
that, and then we'll talk about that next time because I'm trying
Excellent.
to get everyone to watch those episodes because I want to know what people think of them. But I'm gonna
Totally.
go. You're gonna
Yes.
go. We're gonna go watch Ant Man,
Yeah. So
and then
enjoy.
we'll be back here in a month. Yeah,
Exactly. Man, I can't believe it. Time flies. But make sure to
yeah,
subscribe and we'll see you guys next time. And
yeah.
pick up
Thank you.
Superman out now in
Yes,
stores.
please buy Superman.